He's got a podcast. Welcome. You know what I mean? And I'm like, did that just happen?
This is the place to ask questions. This is the place to take notes. This is the place to learn strategy. Welcome to the Visible Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Lewis, and this is the podcast you'll love listening to week after week. After a history in Hollywood, I know what it takes to get visible. And as an entrepreneur, you don't have to keep feeling frustrated and trapped, not able to get yourself out there. Myself, my guests, and even my family are here to lift you up, guide you, and give you powerful ideas so that you can get your unique voice into the online space. Ready? Let's do it.
And action.
Hey, welcome back to the Visible Entrepreneur. Thrilled that you are here today. We are inside of Publicity Month. Very exciting, and I can think of no one better to bring onto the show than my friend Heather Ann Havenwood. Heather is the CEO of Havenwood Worldwide. She is Chief Sexy Boss, and she is a serial entrepreneur and is regarded as a top authority on internet marketing, business strategies, and of marketing. It can feel so overwhelming and just terrifying to put yourself out there to get publicity, to get exposure. And Heather has one of these incredible personalities who has been able to master this through life's lessons along the way. So Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you. This is going to be fun. Get ready to have some major publicity and to be a celebrity.
Heck yes. I know that that's what we all want. And I think that a lot of people start their business and they assume like, oh, I decided I want to start my business. Therefore, let the publicity rain down upon me from the mystical sky. And it just does not happen that way, right?
Look at that. Yeah, seriously.
So
I had to crawl my way.
Right? So I want to hear a little bit about your story. We actually recorded this podcast last week and my software just died. So I'm so grateful that she's come back on the show. And I have a feeling that we're going to dive in even deeper today. So Heather, your journey, because it wasn't like, oh, hey, I became an entrepreneur and made $1 million and look at me. It's like you had some tough knocks. So what kept you going to actually finally build this business that has really launched your career?
Okay, so that's a great question. Honestly, no, it did not just start. I didn't start just making millions out of nowhere. And honestly, in business, it takes something. And publicity is a really big piece. I kind of got the aha of publicity back in 2015. Now, first I need to share with you a little bit of my failures around publicity, because I think what happens when people say, oh, publicity, that looks so easy. It's not. I know Kim Kardashian makes that look easy. It's not, right? Like, go girl, like seriously, but it's not. Like, it's always about stage and presence and constantly keeping up. But I want to share with you some failures. So my book, Sexy Boss, which I sent over to you, Thank you. That's my book, Sexy Boss. So I wrote that book and it published in 90 days, from concept to completion in 90 days. Now, at the same time, I did a podcast called the Sexy Boss Podcast. It's what I call in the graveyards of iTunes right now. Okay. And the reason I'm sharing with that is because I bombed it. It's so bad. The music is the cheesiest, like, hey, welcome, Sexy Boss. It's really bad. It's right. The interviews are amazing of my dearest friends. Like, they were awesome. And I did like 5 interviews and put them all up at once. And I was like, go, publicity, go, right? Nothing happened. It just kind of went, right. So I don't know what I was doing. That was what I thought. So in my head, I went, well, podcasting's horrible. It doesn't work. And then in 2015, I had a friend of mine, just like someone I knew in the industry, reach out to me and say, hey, can you want to be on my show? I talk about like ClickFunnels and ClickBank and stuff. And I was like, that's cool. So I get on there. We just had this conversation. And about a couple weeks later, I get an email from a stranger in Minnesota, and he wanted to be a client. It ended up being a $5,000 coaching client. So here's where my head went. 30 minutes of chit chat, you know what I mean? $5,000. Like,
that's
right?
math that we like to do.
Math, you know, and publicity is about leverage. It's just about leverage and getting the audience on you, like having them see. Because I mean, think about it. How many times have I seen Kim Kardashian walk across the street? And I don't know why. I just watched this person walk across the street. For some reason, she's making millions of dollars for walking across the street or on the red carpet or whatever, right? And the point is about attention. So when you're inside of the conversation around publicity, the conversation is, what are they going to focus on? What is it that I have that's going to cause a sparkle to people say, what is that? You know what I mean? So that's the first step of publicity. And that's what started my journey on publicity.
Awesome. Well, and I love that you're talking about the failures, because a lot of people, look at others and go, oh my God, they have a podcast with this many people, or oh my gosh, their lives get thousands of comments. Like, I'm never going to get there. And so they don't even try. And the thing is, every person who is an entrepreneur has failed miserably at something. I've had like 5 past careers before I started this. So know that, like, if anything, your failures qualify you for this industry. It is going to take time, and it is going to take your attention and your focus and doing things a little bit differently. But I love that you're talking about the success of your book, but the failure of the podcast. So when that happened, how did you shift things around, and what things did you find in your niche that you could excel at to get in the public eye?
Great question. So here I am, go back to 2015. I had this one little interview, really didn't know what I was doing. We just good friends. So it was just more of a chit chat, Mm-hmm. And then I had a client, and I thought, wow, I can do more of that thing called guesting. Let's go there. So I really focused for 1.5 years straight only on guesting. And I did about 150. And here's my view on guesting, which is what I'm doing today. My job is to add as much value as I possibly can to you and whoever's listening to Summit, who's listening. That's my job. It's my job. I'm a guest in your home. And I grew up Southern, so my mom was always like, if you're a guest in their house, it's very like, I serve you. I serve you. My job is to give value. And then I always promote. And so for 1.5 years, about 150 interviews in, I just did that. And I gave as much as I could. Then the cool thing is about meeting people like yourself and other podcasters is called the green room. The green room, right? Mm-hmm. In acting, right? It's all about the green room, right? It's like who you meet in the green room. Right. So I got to ask 1,000 questions because we're in the green room. I just gave value. And then I hey, by the way, what software do you use? Hey, by the way, how'd you market? Hey, by the way, and they just tell me, and I'm like, Psh. So here I am now, 1.5 years in. Now I'm ready to really launch my show. And within 6 months of my show, I got picked up on radio, and now I'm on terrestrial radio. I'm syndicated as well as streamed, as well as iHeart, Spotify, and everything else in between. So, and that's that happened within 1 year of the launch. Now, there's other people that have, my numbers right now, I'm just sharing because we're talking about publicity. It's about between 70 to 80,000 listeners per show. And then it's a reach about 3.2 because I went into syndication and radio, which is a very different kind of baby, right? So I moved into another level of publicity, and I'm on Roku, right? So it's a whole nother level. Right. And the point is in this, I'm taking this right out of what I call the Madonna and Kim Kardashian, lessons of life, which is there's no such thing as bad publicity. Now, I'm not doing weird things like stripping or anything, but the point is, whatever, right? I'm not on CNN or MSNBC or something like that, but I'm still out there. And
absolutely,
all those people had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that. And I'm reminded by Kathy Griffin, who's, comedian, the D-List. Mm-hmm. She really, and that show was really funny, of course, and she's great. But the point of the show is here's what she really could, if she could say it to the camera, she'd say, look, am I Jennifer Aniston? No. But I still make cash. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if she's a B or C or D actress. And in that world, there was a whole, you're George Clooney and Jennifer Aniston and everyone else in between. Mm-hmm. You're down there. But you know what? There's people that are down there that are making millions. So I don't feel like I have to be a Kim Kardashian or Jennifer Aniston to make a great living and have a great life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge I think people see is they see this pinnacle.
Yeah.
And the reality is there's all these other people that are making a great living that you may or may not have ever seen.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of our industry. It's like, where was I? Yeah, I was down in San Diego and I was in some kind of restaurant or whatever. And I thought, like, I was really excited, like co-hosting, and you guys have all the information for the Heart Behind Hustle podcast. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like I looked up to Camila so much a year ago. I can't believe that I'm down here co-hosting a show with her. And this is so cool. And I get to go wherever I want. I get to travel whenever I want, and no one knows who I am. I grew up in Hollywood, like behind the scenes, watching all these actors, watching them get suffocated because they could no longer go outside. I was there for season 1 of Pretty Little Liars when the girls were nobody. And then, as you know, it exploded. So we have this really cool, like, anonymity of being able to do what we do while still getting seen. So I think that that's fascinating. Yesterday, I was on Facebook and I saw you post and you were saying, I've done a ton of interviews and da-da. And there was this one person that was, I can't remember his name, but he was like, yeah, but what was the conversion rate and da-da-da-da-da. Those are the stats that you should post. And I was like, I'm really glad that he posted that, because that's a really interesting point. Because, I mean, first of all, who knows if he's ever been on a show in his life, but the other side of that is you're on some shows that I'm sure have tons of listeners, including your own show. You're on some shows that probably do not, but do you find it to be rewarding to pretty much just go wherever you're wanted, especially while you're still, for lack of a better term, relevant?
Think it might be so relevant.
That's just kind of a word that comes to mind, because so many people are like, oh, I won't do that interview. A lot of actors. And I'm like, why not? Like, while the pan is hot, get yourself out there.
It's to me, I'm never a no to publicity. And that comes from I was taught that by one of my mentors. I don't remember who exactly, but honestly, it's like if you're written up in the National Enquirer, or you're written up in the Wall Street Journal, or you're written up in the local TV, does it matter? Like, it really doesn't, because everything stair steps. Just like if you look at acting, you're in Hollywood, so it's like if you look at some of the big actors, and if you go to their IMDb and you scroll back, like, like
to the very beginning,
you're like, what is that, right? Like, they had to start somewhere. You don't all of a sudden do Mission Impossible out of the womb.
Oh my God, that's one of the movies my dad did. Synchronicity. I love it. Okay, awesome.
People don't just come out of the womb doing grade A. I think of Ben Affleck. There was a period of time that he was a horrible actor. Yep. He did some really bad stuff. Yep. That was this amazing producer, creator, whatever. Yeah. I think people forget, and also let's remember Kim Kardashian. How did she get started? Sex tape and Playboy. Okay, I mean, look, people. All right, so you've got to understand it. I'm a yes anything. I've been on pet shows, lawyer shows, not even know if it ever got out show. Like, it doesn't matter. To me, it's also about connecting with the people and the podcaster and the person, like, because now I have a connection. It's also about giving value. It's also about it's connecting with whoever's listening. Like, who am I to say? I've been on a sports show. That one was a lot of fun, because they're like, how are you going to come on talking about marketing? I'm like, let's talk about marketing of football teams. Let's bring it on, okay? Some of you guys rock like cowboys, and then there's the others, all right? So,
oh my God,
but we had this whole fun conversation, and it's also learning to be in an environment. If you look at how movies are promoted, they'll go to what I call the rounds, and they will go to New York, and they'll go to all the late nights. Yep. They will do Jimmy Kimmel, they will do the big ones, but they also do the late. They'll do whatever. The morning shows, they'll do this, they'll do that. Because they know it doesn't matter. Just do them all as much as you possibly can. And I've learned that. And they actually have a thing that you probably know the name of it more than I do, because I've never actually been, but I've heard that when they do those kinds of round robins, they literally have like a hotel, and they have all the different journalists in different rooms, and they literally just go room to room to room to room to room for like a day.
Yep.
And that's how they do it.
Yeah. Well, and even like Nathan and I were talking about it. My husband's a camera guy, and we were asking a couple people, like, when's the last time you've been to a movie? And they're like, oh, I don't know, but like I do Netflix and I have Amazon Prime and and I'm sitting there going, wow, like even the industry is changing. And what's really exciting about that is as entrepreneurs, we're kind of on the cusp of that because we've had to figure out how to organically get our own publicity, do our own marketing strategies that aren't necessarily the way that these big wigs in Hollywood know about. So that's really exciting. And if you're listening to this, knowing that you don't have to have a publicist, you don't have to have a book yet, you don't have to do any of that right now. If your goal is to just get a couple things under your belt so that you can start getting a little bit known, get more comfortable on interviews, Heather, what would your advice be?
I would be definitely focusing on guesting. That would be a big one. I will say that if to take it to the next level, right, to make sure I get this in, to be an expert in today's world, if you want to play, like I call play, you want to play with the big boys or just be playing there, you got to have two things. You have to have a book. Got to get a book. You can oversell it for a while, but you eventually can't. The second thing is you have to have your own show. Again, eventually you can overstep it like I did, but I knew there was at some point I had to have my own show if I was going to continue. It's because when I have a show and you interview me, it's like a vice versa. You know what I mean? It's kind of a give and take after a while. You really have to make sure nowadays, people that I interview, they usually have all their own shows, right? It's like I interview them, they interview me, vice versa, vice versa. So we're constantly cross-promoting. It's not just a give once, it's not a take. So I think that the focus is guesting first, really owning it. I have a book out called Power Guesting. It teaches you exactly what I did without a PR person.
Awesome.
All myself. And then I literally lay it out. I laid out the emails I wrote. I laid out my media page. I literally lay exactly what I did. And then on top of that, the next thing is to really look at, if you want to go to the next level in publicity, you've got to have a book and a podcast. And it's funny because even in cable news tonight, like Fox News and MSNBC and whatever your take is on CNN, all those, if you notice, it used to be, this is so-and-so, they have a book out, blah, 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 blah. Right now it's like, this is so-and-so, they have a podcast.
Right?
Right?
Yep.
I mean, can you imagine that 5 years ago? They're like, podcast.
What's
now
that?
it's like, oh, you're an expert. You've got a podcast.
Yep.
I'm like, when did that happen? I think it happened like in the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I was just at the Moon Tower Comedy Festival here in Austin, which is just this huge 4-day event of comedy. And every single time that they were introducing people that had a podcast, they'd be like, and this is so-and-so. He's been on ABC, HBO, Saturday Night Live. He's got a podcast. Welcome. You know what I mean? And I'm like, did that just happen? That just happened. So I actually help people launch their podcast. So I was like, that's cool. But nowadays it's like you got to have both or one or the other. I say both, and so they get to choose. But there's somewhere along the way that podcast has now become like you just, it's what you do. It's just kind of one of those things. To be an expert, it's what you do. It used to be like, it's like, she's been written up in NBC, ABC, Huffington Post, Fox News, CNN. Now it's like, oh, forget all that. She's got a podcast, people.
Right?
You know what I mean? So,
Well, and that's what's interesting is that getting those features, it's great for your titles, especially if you're applying to be interviewed for something, but that's not necessarily a huge traffic source. And I think that's why podcasts are so incredible, because people are subscribing and they're listening and they're referring it by word of mouth. That's what's so important about podcasting. So if you've been thinking about it, if you're on the fence, highly recommend it. Just interview people. You don't even have to set yourself up as an expert. That's going to happen naturally because you're interviewing people. But the best thing that you can do is facilitate other people around you that are more successful, bring them onto your show. It is such an amazing avenue. And really quick, tell me the link of your guesting book, because I want to be sure to put that below.
Thank you. So it's heatherhavenwood.com/Amazon. Which just goes to all my books.
Cool.
And I just want to add to that real quick what you said, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
So, my firm actually helps people launch their shows. We have about 5 shows under our belt right now in this first quarter of 2018. And part of what I've learned is that it helps you network. So we have a doctor who, it's odd, he's a doctor helping people with schizophrenia. Like you talk about niche.
Wow.
Totally. Like it's way out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, whoa.
But like exciting. Really.
Exciting. It's super cool. So what he said was he reached out to me. He's like 3 or 4 episodes in at this point. He goes, this is so cool because all these mentors and people in the industry that I just look up to, I've read their articles or white papers. I reach out to them and say, hey, I have a podcast. Can I interview you? And they take my call and they're like, yeah, sure. There's an automatic of like, oh my God, there's these doors open up. And I'll give you another one. I was, like I said, Moon Tower Comedy Festival. I am taking a comedy class personally. I am not a comedian and I'm not funny, but I'm studying it. Yeah. I'm studying the concepts. So here I am in this big space and there's these awesome comedians going, and they have the Schuyler brothers. They're in LA. I don't know if you heard of them.
I've heard the name.
Them in my life. I see them on stage. They are freaking hilarious. I was like, wow, right? And I passed them, and like, when you pass them off the stage, and everyone's like, oh, good job, good job, good job. They're doing like, oh, thanks. Mm-hmm. And I passed them up, and I went to the bathroom, and I came back and went, wait a minute. I have my own show.
I have a
show. So I walk out, I'm like, hi, I'm Heather. I have a National K radio show. They're like, oh, hi. So I was no longer this weirdo, right?
Right. You stood out.
I'd like to interview you guys about what is it like to be comedians and brothers and entrepreneurs. Here's our number. Here's our PR person. Here's I mean, boom. Imagine if I didn't have that. I'd be like, I want to hang out with you. Be like, yeah. So it opens up doors when you own your own show, when you have your own book, when you're on people's shows. It opens up those doors to be those green room experiences that are really, really, really key. And publicity is just, you got to do your own. You can't rely on anyone.
So true. And I love creating your own. Of course, you can still be applying to things, but create your own stuff. I grew up wanting to be an actress, wanting to be a writer, all these things, and you had to go through an agent and you had to take these specific classes or no one would even look at you. And I rebelled against it so much because I went, why are other people in control of me getting seen? Which is why I think I did this and why I call this show The Visible Entrepreneur. I don't want anyone else to be in control of me getting my name out there. And Heather obviously is the same way. So take your own authority back. Know that there's not precisely one way for you to get seen, and you can do it. You can create your own show. Of course, you can get interviewed on stuff, but create your own momentum. And I love that. So Heather, before we go, I would love to hear just 1 or 2 quick tips of how you built momentum with this.
Okay, the book. Yeah, great. So great question. So first of all, I had a very different intention with that book than most people in our industry have a view. So most people in our industry have a view, not a wrong way. I'm just laying out the land.
Yeah, please do.
So most of them, if you go to people that help you write a book, which again, I have a lot of friends that do that, they're like, well, what's your audience and what's your message to them? And let's make sure the book is the attractor for your business. It's a very reversal process, which I get. For me, I didn't really have that going on. I had a massive bankruptcy and a massive financial foreclosure and completely lost everything I had in 2008. And a friend of mine at that time, Alex Mendozian, said, one day you'll talk about this. And my response to him was pretty much like a bleep, 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 bleep you or something like that. Right? I'm like, hell no, I'll say that. And he goes, well, when you're ready, I'll let you go now. Anyway, so I was ready. I was ready to talk about my story. I was ready to share with it. And a friend of mine, Joe Sugarman, who's a mentor, looked at me and goes, you're like a sexy boss. You're powerful and you own who you are. You're a sexy boss. And I was like, that's in my book. So I knew that I wanted to come out with my personal story. That book is really my transformation. It's a transformational conversation. It's every lesson I had to deal with to overcome adversity. So I wrote it for me. I wrote it from a perspective, if just one person bought it and liked it, it was a success. That was my measure. And from the concept to completion, and the Audible as well as the physical and Kindle up in 90 days. If one person read it, one person bought it, and one person liked it, success. That was my goal. I didn't think, I'm going to build a whole business around. I'm going to have Ryan Dice on the first week say it's amazing. I didn't know any of that, so I wrote it from a different view. My next book, Power Guesting, I wrote from a specific, this is a strategy I use for, and I want to give that to coaches, authors, and speakers. That's a very specific tactic. Not much story there, you know. But The Sexy Boss was really kind of a personal overcoming story. And how it leveraged me is in the 150 podcasts I was on, I would not have been able to get on any of those without a book. I wouldn't have.
Yes.
Because it was my door. It was my opening. It was like, hey, I got a book. Here's what this book is about. It's about overcoming adversity. It's about overcoming failure. I'd like to be interviewed. You know, and so no matter what industry interviewed me, they could all relate to that. Even if it was male or women, it didn't matter. It was, it's overcoming adversity and failure. Our audience will like that. So I think that part of the process when you're thinking about a book, I know we get caught up in like, it's got to be this thing, you know, but honestly, it's like, what can I just add value to people? And what can be a big door opener for you? The leverage is key.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that that's really key. And if a book has been something you've always been dreaming of doing, obviously it can be done. Maybe not in 90 days. I think that's amazing. But I love that your perspective is if it touches one person, if it helps one person get back up, that's the beauty of what we do. So if you're taking anything away from today's episode, take that away. Reach that one person. So Heather, I'm so excited that you were on the show today. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom. Let us know where our listeners can find you.
Absolutely. So they can find me at heatherhavenwood.com. That's heatherhavenwood.com. Also, I have my own gift for you guys. You can go to askheatherann.com, askheatherann.com. And what that is it opens up my Messenger chatbot, so you can experience me and my little video coming out. And I give you 3 free chapters of my audiobook, Sexy Boss, as well as 3 chapters of Joe Sugarman's Triggers about human psychology. So it's a really good gift. You can't get that audiobook anywhere with triggers. That's my little free gift. It's askheatherann.com.
Perfect. So we're going to link all this in the show notes below. And remember, Publicity Jumpstart has officially come out this month. So be sure to check the show notes, get that book for yourself, grab both of Heather's books. If anything, the one thing that I do every single day is I go to the coffee shop and I bring books. I study, I implement, and it's been one of the things that has really contributed to my success. So take some action and do that. Again, Heather, thank you so much for being on the show. Now get out there, audience, and get more visible and create your own publicity. See you in the next episode. When I first got started with my online business, I looked at people who are getting featured in places like Huffington Post and Forbes and Inc. and wondering how the heck did they do that, right? In terms of me, I grew up in film and TV, so the video part and the branding part was really easy, but landing the press seemed impossible. But then I met a girl named Kristen Marquet who became my publicist and showed me the exact steps to take in order to land places like Entrepreneur on Fire, Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Medium, Just Lex, the list goes on and on. It doesn't mean that I'm special. It means that we figured out a formula that works and we want to show you. Kristen and I have teamed up to write a book called Publicity Jumpstart, and we can't wait to share it with you. Get on the waiting list now. Order your copy today at publicityjumpstart.com, where we show you the top 10 ways to get your brand featured in the press. We can't wait to come alongside you in this journey. This is by far the most actionable entrepreneur book I've ever read when it comes to press, and I can't wait for you to get your hands on a copy. So go to publicityjumpstart.com and get yours today. I hope you loved this episode as much as I did. Now, we're all about building a tribe here at The Visible Entrepreneur, so be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and then head on over to the Facebook group. It's a great place where you can practice your video, live stream, and really enjoy the community that we have built. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next episode. Now get out there and get more visible.
That's a wrap.